Welcome to Let's Fix America, a show in which young Americans champion their big ideas they hope will shape the future of American politics.
In a good way, of course.
My name is Jeff Hall.
And I'm Brooke Ballhaus.
Let's Fix America is completely nonpartisan. All sides are welcome here. Our focus is on solutions, not finger pointing.
Today's topic is food waste reduction. Today's presentation will be broken up into 3 parts. In part 1, 2 young champions will present their big picture overview of the issue of food waste, including policy recommendations.
We will then open the floor to what we call the cabinet, fellow students who will weigh in and give their constructive criticism or ask questions intended to make the policy proposals even better.
In part 2, we'll hear from our innovators, some students and recent grads who are running a real-world project that helps reduce food waste. After they are done, the student cabinet will once again chime in.
In part 3, we'll ask some adult experts to give our young innovators feedback, ideas, encouragement, support.
We hope to get a dialogue going between younger and older, older and younger.
Let's Fix America isn't a game show or a contest. There won't be big prizes at the end. The real winner, we hope, will be America. Brooke, tee this up for us. Give us some background on the issue of food waste in America.
In modern America, we have access to food at the snap of our fingers. With today's delivery services, we take for granted the meals we can have in an instant. But 30 to 40% of our food supply becomes food waste, ending up in a landfill. Methane gas seeps out from these landfills, adding to global warming. 160 billion pounds of food per year, enough to fill a 90,000-seat football stadium every day, are tossed away at the retail and consumer level. This is food that could feed hungry and impoverished families. 50% of Americans feel guilty wasting so much food, while 1 in 6 Americans struggle to get enough to eat. Something needs to change.
Thank you, Brooke. Now let's hear from our young champions, Marianne Swan and Clegg. They will present their big picture overview of the issue of food waste in America, including specific policy recommendations.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm Amanda. I am currently a senior at Texas A&M University, pursuing a Bachelor's of Science in Political Science. After undergraduate, I plan on attending law school and then hopefully moving into politics.
How about you, Marianne?
My name is Marianne Swan. I'm a recent graduate from the State University of New York at Oneonta. I studied environmental sustainability, and I'm very interested in local agriculture, and I hope to apply that knowledge to policymaking in the future.
Thank you, champions. Now tell us, how do you propose to fix America?
So, why does food waste matter? Food waste contributes to climate change when organic matter breaks down, or at least carbon dioxide and methane. And landfills will produce as many greenhouse gases in 1 year as 20 million cars do. Additionally, wasted food is wasted money, both at the national and consumer levels. And meanwhile, millions of Americans are going without access to nutritious food.
So what exactly do we propose? That food waste must be halved in the next decade. Our proposal will reduce greenhouse gas emissions and address food insecurity. Not only will businesses and consumers save money, but the harmful and costly effects of climate change will be mitigated. There will be more equitable access to nutritious food, and consumers will enjoy a greater connection to their local growers. Furthermore, this proposal also tackles the source of food waste at all levels of the food supply chain. The bulk of food waste actually happens at the consumer level, but there are many factors that affect consumer decisions.
So to address these many factors, we propose that restaurants and grocery store chains, along with food processors and distributors, will be required to measure and record their food waste findings to inform reduction plans. And small retailers and restaurants will have more time to create and implement their plans. But to incentivize food industries to participate, each business that meets or exceeds their yearly waste reduction goal will receive a subsidy. And food entities that fail to make a plan and meet its goals won't receive a subsidy, and they will be fined 3% of their revenue. So recommendations for waste reduction approaches will be prepared by the FDA and the USDA, and they will be made available online.
There are some simple strategies that stores will use to reduce food waste, such as adding shelves to produce displays and selling popular ready-made meals during peak times. This will be done by analyzing the peak times of day that individuals consume meals. Some stores have found success selling aesthetically damaged goods at a discounted price. Also, food that has been expired for 1 to 3 days in stores and restaurants will be donated to local shelters and soup kitchens.
So a lot of food waste happens during transportation. Investing in refrigeration can reduce this, as well as shifting to local suppliers, because that reduces the amount of distance that food has to travel. A virtual inventory can help identify where waste happens. So distributors and processors can use this supply chain data to reduce errors and oversupplying and improve order forecasting. The issues with farming is that many farmers are locked into strict commercial growing contracts, so they overplant to ensure that they're going to meet their quota. So one potential solution to this is using community-supported agriculture, known as CSAs. And this is an existing model that can reduce waste at the farm and transportation levels, but not at its current scale. So in a CSA, consumers buy farm shares. They give the farmer a certain amount of money and they will get produce every week or every other week. The farmer has a buffer for winter with a steady income, and consumers are getting a steady supply of fresh local food. So to enhance the existing model, we propose supplementing CSA growth with a 1% tax and massive agribusinesses like Tyson, Cargill, and Smithfield. This will provide revenue to advise farmers on becoming CSAs and expanding their enterprises. Additionally, the money from the factory farm tax will also provide subsidies for farms that grow food crops, produce a variety of goods, and use sustainable techniques. Businesses that get food from CSAs will receive subsidies as well.
The FDA and USDA will partner to provide online guides and community workshops for information on food waste reduction strategies visible here. Through a combination of federal incentives to reduce food waste at the industry level, more focus on local agriculture, and an information campaign, the public will be more aware of the issue with food waste.
Thank you, champions. And now let's open it up to the cabinet, fellow students who have been listening in.
Hi, my name is Benny. I am a junior at Princeton University studying math and economics, and I'm calling in from Westchester, New York.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cole Whitty, and I'm a sophomore at Dulles High School in Sugar Land, Texas.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Devin Rector, and I am a recent graduate from Morehouse College with a BA in Political Science, and I will be attending Howard Law School in the fall.
Hi, I am Sam Taylor. I am currently a senior at Harriman High School in Utah, and I'm also a prospective student at Brigham Young University, where I plan to study political science.
Are there any questions, suggestions, or critiques that could help Marianne and Amanda improve their proposal?
Yeah, I have a question for the presenters. So as you guys are probably aware from doing research on this topic, there has been a national effort very similar to one that you've described, put together by the USDA, the Department of Agriculture, and the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, called the Food Loss and Waste 2030 Champions, which consists of a large group of national corporations, including Kellogg's, Amazon, Kroger, General Mills, all who share the goal of reducing their food waste by 50% over the next decade by 2030. My question is, where do you guys fit into this existing national initiative?
Absolutely. Great question. So yes, our goals do coincide well, but there are some aspects of our proposal that initiative leaves out, such as the focus on CSAs, community-supported agriculture. That is one limb of the existing program that could use some strengthening. And while they focus on food processors and distributors, they focus less so on the so-called factory farms like Tyson, Cargill. So our proposal asks to get some revenue from those existing enterprises. And we have an information campaign as well.
When you did the pie chart on what causes breaking down the food waste and where it comes from, the overwhelming majority happened to be at the consumer level. And during your presentation, I know there was heavy emphasis on the businesses and the productions, but how do we tackle the consumer level? Because we know, I think the pie chart had at least around 60%, maybe even more. And I believe that if we want to tackle food waste as an issue, if 60% is coming at the consumer level, shouldn't we focus at the consumer level, or is that not strategic?
So I completely agree. It's not just about like retailers and stores and these big companies. It's about at an individual level too, at the end of the day, working with food waste. I know at a personal level, besides doing the stocks, the displays, donating to the soup kitchens, to homeless shelters, extra food. At an individual level, there's things like composting, and you can also, preserve foods too by different methods. I think that's kind of along what you're asking. Are you talking about more like an individual level, how we would do it?
So, we start at the policy level. What type of policies could we create that will trickle down and impact at the individual level. For example, if you wanted individuals to, during the Reagan administration, when they wanted to end drunk driving accidents, what they did is they created you had to be 21 to drink.
Yeah.
And that impacted it. I'm saying in terms of at the policy level, what can we create that impacts people on the individual level?
So it's absolutely true that a lot of the waste, majority of the waste happens at the consumer level. So it's going to take significant cultural and societal change for people to recognize that, oh, my throwing out food is making climate change worse. So through those information campaigns, through the changes that they're going to see when they go out to eat at the restaurants and they see smaller portions, when they go to the grocery store and they see that the produce is displayed differently, that there's this whole other market for, damaged goods. Our hope is that that will create a longer lasting, deeper change in values in consumers. And we will have resources available for things you can do in the home, various things that you can do at a home level. But to encourage people to do that, we are trying to get some direction from the government and the other food industries.
All right. So I think it's largely unequivocal that reducing food waste is something that should be a priority. But one of the concerns that I have as you were presenting is what precisely is going to happen to, say, the waste management or landfill industry. Obviously we should try to reduce food waste in as much as we can, but is there a way to mitigate the harms that this may have for, let's say, individuals who owe their livelihoods to taking care of food waste and kind of dealing with, I guess, just the abundance of garbage and the like that accompanies that?
That's a great question. I think mainly at the distribution and processing level, there could definitely be a redistribution of jobs for the aspects that we were delving into. So such as different types of transportation for foods, people who are going to help ensure that these information campaigns are getting out correctly, the ones that are helping present those things, helping, I guess, implement in general and incentivize the general public too. There can definitely be a new allocation of jobs for those individuals, but I totally agree with your concern and I can definitely understand where you're coming from by mentioning that.
Yes, more of a bigger picture question. I was wondering, say the proposal is implemented, I was wondering at what threshold would you consider the proposal to be successful?
Ideally, we set the goal of 50% because that seems like a palpable, feasible thing to reach in 10 years. But obviously, we want to create a further incentive for businesses to do better. So we will continue to provide subsidies for the food industries that reduce their waste every year. So if you've reduced your waste from 50 to 55%, you will still get that subsidy. So in terms of knowing when it's complete, I suppose it would be when our landfills are no longer filling up and we don't have to ship our waste to other countries.
So you might have already mentioned this in your presentation. I just kind of wanted to clarify, what exactly are these subsidies for compliant companies going to amount to? And if there's no exact, these companies are going to receive this degree of funding from the government if they follow with these specific criteria, then what government organizations would be responsible for determining those criteria?
Right now, our ballpark figure is a 5% subsidy. So 5% of the industry's revenue would be the amount of money that they're going to get every year. And the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, Department of Agriculture, the USDA, and the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, are all going to play a role in working with states to make sure that these plans are being created and implemented.
Thank you, cabinet members.
Now in part 2, we will hear from a group of young innovators who are on the front lines when it comes to food waste reduction. Innovators, please introduce yourselves and tell us about your big project.
My name is Ria. I am a student from the University of San Diego, working with my colleague, CJ.
I go to San Diego State University. My name is CJ Bumate, and we're currently working on a mobile app called Till to address food waste in our local communities and eventually all across the country.
Okay, innovators, take it away.
Well, thank you again for having us. Our startup is called Till. It is a mobile app based out of San Diego. And to kind of give you a little bit of background on our startup, most of us were working at restaurants, as most young people do, where we witnessed firsthand exactly how much perfectly good food was being thrown away at the end of the day. Knowing that all this food can be given to others to eat, but was instead just being tossed was difficult to stomach. So we decided to do something about it. And to speak a little bit more about the problem of food waste as a whole, 1/3 of all food produced is thrown away, which is to $1 trillion US. and that equates to 4 gigatons of CO2.
So because we saw that there was so much food waste happening in restaurants all over, and we had people on our team working in restaurants in Australia and the US, everywhere, but specifically focusing on the United States, we've created an app which allows customers to purchase restaurants' excess food at the end of the day. So instead of throwing it out, in a lot of states in the US, it's illegal to feed the homeless without a permit. Instead of obtaining that permit and going through that tedious process, they can partner with us, sell their food on our platform, and we inform all of our downloads, all of the people who have our app. They can go ahead and purchase that food, which allows customers to eat cheaper, allows for a lot of recycling and sustainability, and then also allows for restaurants to boost their revenue without risk. So these are a couple of screen grabs of our app, which is currently live on the App Store. It is fully functioning. We have about 10 to 15 restaurant partners, and we're currently growing every day. This allows restaurants, you can check just on the main feed. If you look in the middle, you'll be able to see a map where it shows you which restaurants in your area are currently partnered with Till. You have a login page, and then you have an orders page as well, which tells you, these are the orders that you've had. When do you pick it up? What did you get? What was the price? And finally, you get a QR code, and then you go to the restaurant. You get a QR code. The customer shows that QR code to the restaurant, confirming the purchase, and then you get your food. This is our team. CJ, you want to touch a little bit about our team?
Yeah, so 2 of our founders, both named Till, met them through university just because we wanted to solve some problems in our community. Hul Shavade is our CTO. He's the one that developed our app. Ria Pandit, head of sales. This is me, I'm the CPO, as well as I do a lot of sales and marketing as well. And we also have Nikki. And here are some of our advisors, Ms. Tanya Hertz, Gary Lyons, Jenny Amaranini, as well as Giacomo. And yeah, that's pretty much our team.
Now let's hear again from our cabinet.
My question, will restaurants be somewhat disincentivized to actually engage with your app because they might fear that customers will, shift to getting the excess food at the lower prices instead of actually going to the store at normal hours or purchasing the food normally when it doesn't have those discounts?
That's 100% valid. We have thought about that in the past as well. And, our main goal is to, reduce food waste and not interfere with our business partners, regular business operations. So what we do is we give them a lot of flexibility in that they only use our app when they feel the need to. So they may have, food surplus on, some days, but maybe not the rest of the week. It's completely up to their discretion. So there's no way for consumers to kind of game the system and give themselves a discount because you never know when it's going to be on there.
And also statistics show that if a customer gets a free trial, and keep in mind through Till it's not free, they're still paying. But if a customer gets a discounted price and gets to try the food and they love it and they're happy to try it for the first time, a first-time customer tries it for a cheaper price, statistics have shown that customer will come back to that restaurant to pay full price for that meal because that's what they want. And there is no guarantee at the end of the day that exactly what CJ said, that food will be there, right? Maybe once every 2 weeks, there's a pepperoni slice available. But if it's Monday and it's lunch and you want a pepperoni slice, you're not going to wait because you never know. So you're going to go and pay full price for food that you want.
I'll jump in because I am curious about something. What is your business model? I'm assuming you take a cut of the action, like for every dish sold, you get a certain percentage or something like that?
Absolutely. So we are currently at a revenue share model, which means that if a pizza sells for $10 and usually they sell for 20 and they sell it on our app for 10, then we get maybe $1 or $2 out of that. Because we have just recently launched and we're trying to scale, we are giving a couple of months free to our partners just so they feel comfortable. We get their feedback, we improve our processes to the best of our ability. And then after that, we will be starting that revenue share model. But yes, that's the model we're going on.
In regards to, for clarification, you guys are buying the leftover food from the restaurants, correct?
No, the restaurants, they put food on our app at a discounted price. We're not buying it. We're just a platform that connects them with the customers.
And so and then through the app, customers can buy the food from the restaurant.
Yeah,
that's correct.
Exactly.
My question is, will people actually buy the leftover food? Because in regards to your app, right, the idea is amazing. But from a practical standpoint, our individuals are really going to be willing to go out and even at a discounted price, because most people like their food warm, hot, fresh, etc. Well, you guys have the resources, I guess, not only keep the food warm, but keep it in a way to where it's attractive to the people. Because in regards to food waste in general, a lot of times why the food is being wasted is because no one wants to eat the leftover food.
That's a great question. It's not food that has been sitting. I think what you're picturing as leftover food is that's been sitting out on the table, out on the shelf for days. It's not that. It's fresh food. So, for example, one of our partners is Donut Bar. Every morning they come in and they make donuts. Okay. Their business model works that as soon as they sell that last donut, the owner goes home. So she doesn't know what time she's going to close, but the minute she sells the last donut, she's going to go home. So the point is it's not excess food. It's food that hasn't been sold by the end of the day. It's food that's like, hey, either you can come in and purchase it at full price before the restaurant closes, or the restaurant's trying to accelerate the process of getting rid of some of the food that's not selling in those last hours. So that's how we kind of accelerate and speed up the process. And that's a very real scenario for a lot of restaurant owners. So it's not cold food. It's not something that's bad. It's just accelerating a process and allowing our platform to connect those people, the restaurants to the people.
Hey guys, so to reiterate a point that Sam made earlier, I am just a student. I have no experience in the food industry. So to a layperson like me, your app sounds amazing. I absolutely love the message. I love the presentation. I love the idea behind it. So somebody like myself, my friends, college students, loving this this kind of a product. The only question I have is, I live in New York. I go to school in New Jersey. You guys are located in San Diego. Do you guys have plans to expand across the country? Are you even looking that far ahead right now? What are your plans in the future? Are you going to expand to a couple of major cities?
As of right now, we're still in San Diego, so we're just trying to capture our entire San Diego market and then eventually move to LA and then eventually the Bay Area. And then once we have, a bulk of California, move to the East Coast. But as of right now, our focus is, take care of home and local restaurants, local nonprofits, just people in our area. And then once we get that done, we can definitely, move forward and expand.
It was previously mentioned before about the quality of the food. I was wondering, was there like a method in which the Till app implements like a quality check, whether it be like through like pictures of the food that's going to be sold or like a review system implemented?
Very, very good question. Our restaurant partners should go through quality check, and I'm pretty sure they do because no one likes to get sued in America. We have our restaurants, they have a restaurant version of the app. So when they post the food, they have access to the camera. So they take a picture of the food and post it, right? The second they post it, the people who have downloaded the customer version of the app get a notification. Hey, Seaside Pizza is your local pizza shop. They posted 3 or 4 slices of pizzas, and you get a picture of it. We do not have a formal quality check in place, but that is something that we are working on internally to ensure that there's no holes in that. But as of yet, we've had a good amount of sales since we've launched and we've never had an issue, but that's not to say that the issue may not come up. So, that is a really great idea and something that we really need to implement on a more formal level because most of the food that they sell is made fresh and daily. So, it's not like it's been something, but I think we should have a more formal process for that.
Thank you again, cabinet members.
And now in part 3, we'll hear from some experts in different aspects of the food industry. We'd like to invite them to comment on what they've heard and offer any suggestions they might like to contribute.
Take a moment or two and introduce yourselves. I want our young innovators, champions, and cabinet members to know they're about to hear from some true authorities. Mike Campbell, let's start with you.
I have really enjoyed this. To all the students, thank you. Very thoughtful, very intelligent. My background is I live in a small community called Clarksburg in California. It's in the Sacramento Delta. And my background is I grew up on a small farm, worked as a farm worker through college, went to graduate school. Well, I went to my undergraduate work was at UC Davis. And I went to graduate school in New Zealand in agricultural economics, 2 years in the Army, and then I came back and farmed with my father in the Delta for 10 years. At that point, I went to the Stanford Business School, and then, like Jeff, was a White House Fellow in Washington, D.C. during the Reagan administration. Came back, did farm management, started a farm management company, and then spent the rest of my career at the University of California at UC Davis as an associate dean in the College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences, and an instructor in the Agricultural Economics Department. And then I was on the small team that started UC Merced, the 10th UC campus. Throughout that entire time, I've been continued to be involved with production agriculture. I've raised fish in an aquaculture environment and shipped them all over the world, apples to farmers markets. So I'm still very involved on a daily basis in production agriculture.
Seth Horowitz.
I am a hotelier, have been in the business since 18 years old back in Johannesburg, South Africa, and have been moving with Western hotels and resorts through to Boston and then through Vail and landed up in Los Angeles. And I've been working at boutique hotels here in the Los Angeles area for the last couple of decades. I actually met Jeff when I was the general manager and area manager for the Lux Hotels in the Brentwood area, which was his neck of the woods. So it's good to see you again, Jeff, and I think this is a very worthwhile endeavor. I worked there. I worked at a little hotel called the Oceana Hotel, and I worked for the last 8 years at the Culver Hotel in Culver City, California, which is a gorgeous little property. And very unfortunately, COVID dealt it a death knell. It did not survive. We are closed, and I have a consultancy now and am working in the hospitality industry still. I am extraordinarily impressed and look forward to talking a little bit about Till because it excites me. I think there is something real there that is applicable to our industry, and I really look forward to talking a bit about that. So thanks for inviting me here, Jeff, and nice to see everybody.
Fred Jones.
First of all, Jeff, kudos to you for your efforts in this regard. I fully support him, and I'm very impressed with the feedback that the students have given tonight. I actually grew up on a very small farm in Missouri. It was more like a hobby. Undergraduate's computer science, got my MBA from Stanford, then pursued a finance career, 2 years in banking and leasing, and then treasurer or CFO of 4 large publicly held companies. Then did CEO and CFO advisory work for middle market companies and startups. One of them included 1.5 years as an embedded CFO in a 30-store cafeteria chain, mainly in the Carolinas. So I got some firsthand experience there of the various issues and challenges of on the restaurant side.
Barry Korn.
Hi, thanks, Jeff. And again, I appreciate you inviting me onto this. So I have been on the business side of restaurants for about the last dozen years. I started my life actually as an investment banker, following graduating from Harvard Business School. I figure with the 2 Stanford guys on here, I better throw HBS a line. And then after about 14 years of doing that, I decided to get into the restaurant business. And I had my own restaurant briefly here in New York City. And then I've worked on the finance side of a quick service place, a fast casual place, actually an ice cream parlor, and a couple of full service dining, restaurants. And so, yeah, it's an interesting app. They're actually, and I'd mentioned this to Jeff, there is something here in New York called Too Good To Go, which is a sort of this type of platform here in New York, which I'd encourage the students to look into just to sort of get ideas and sort of compare notes.
Okay, gentlemen, let's get a conversation started. Tell us what you think of what you've just heard.
And students, feel free to ask our guest mentors any questions you like. This is your chance to connect with some real experts.
My expertise is mostly in hotels, and food and beverage is always the more difficult department to be able to turn a profit. Just on a very, very macro level, every dollar you make in the hotel side of selling rooms you can make 80 cents on that dollar. In the food and beverage division, if you know what you're doing, you might be able to make 20 cents. And that's in a successful operation. So this idea of generating revenue as well as generating the following of your local community, as well as helping in the process of eliminating food waste, makes 100% sense to me. When Jeff first spoke to me about it, I thought that this is something I would do immediately. And then listening to the presentation, I think that there is a very strong possibility that if this is handled correctly, that it can be a substantial part of a marketing plan for most restaurants, and it doesn't have to be pizza parlors. I ran the last hotel, was a bar restaurant that was extremely busy. And the idea of having an ability towards the end of the evening, not at the end, not right at the end, but towards the end of the evening, to have an assessment of what I can put on the market at a discounted rate and attract regular business and possibly have them come in and possibly package it together is a very, very enticing idea. The part that I'm interested to find out from the team is this is completely dependent on the buy-in from the kitchen staff and the waiters, the actual people who exercise the process. Management and ownership could love the idea, but unless the incentive is for them to do it, it won't happen. So an owner who's sitting in a pizza parlor or a donut store will do this, but I think that's looking small. You need to look much bigger, and it needs to be worked out. The pricing and the business model has to incentivize the kitchen. The kitchen will throw away food if that means that they can go home on time at 10 p.m. if they're closing at 10 p.m. So it needs to tie in very clearly with the sweat of the kitchen and the sweat of the servers who are putting it together. And I think there's no reason for it just to be to go. I know we've all been in COVID, but the idea of having the people come to your location, especially if they are busy locations, the busier a place gets, the more buzz there is. And if there's some revenue coming in to food that would have been thrown away, it's a win-win for me as a business person. And as long as my staff are being taken care of, it's a win for them. And for that student, it's a huge win because they're getting good food at a hugely discounted price.
Seth, it's great to meet you. We're very, very excited that you're excited about Till. We have talked about hotel catering time and time again, and this is exactly the conversation we have had internally. Right now, because we are in San Diego, we're working with local communities. You're absolutely right. It's very easy for a pizza shop owner or a donut bar owner to upload something on an app and send it, but they're also busy. And so, not all the time. You're 100% right that this is a problem we have to solve as soon as we move up bigger in scale, like hotels, catering, etc. To answer your question, when we do move into the hotel, the bar, the catering, the bigger scale, there is nothing that's more important to us that is ease of operations, because the last thing you want to do is solve a problem and then create a new one. Mm-hmm. So that's exactly what we're trying to do. Is the second we do get into that market, and we are absolutely willing to expand, as soon as we get that connection or as soon as that need is there. And if anybody's willing to give us a pilot, try it out, give us a test to run that, because we haven't gotten into that space yet, but we'd love to, is sit down with the bar and the management and the operations and see what works best for them, by either having one person where if the bar closes at 10 p.m., at 9 p.m., we have one person who's in charge of assessing what's remaining, seeing that night if they want to put something special on the app, if not, and then creating an automatic process, right? Where if every night you have extra fries remaining, because that's something you just cook and keep, that's something that's on the app and that's automated through our process. So that is something that is very, very essential to that process, and we're very aware of it. But that is something that we just can only experience once we get there, right? And we have that ability to see every bar's process is different, every operations is different. So we want to make sure that we fit the need in a way where it makes it very easy for everybody through automation. And that's where we're going to be going. But in order to do that, we need, somebody to give us a chance in that space.
Obviously, the students think that food waste is an issue. I'd like to ask our adult mentors, what is your experience in your own fields of work? So Mike, you've worked on farms, and Fred and Barry have restaurant experience. Seth just spoke to this issue. What is your experience with food waste, and what can you do in your own setting?
My experience is that there are governmental guidelines on quality of product that can be sold. So you have to meet those standards. At least we did. We had to meet those standards. And also consumers are particularly picky about how their food looks. And for the most case, I think grocery stores, we're talking about produce, vegetables, fruit, as far as where the waste comes from. So it's really hard to sell something that's blemished because most consumers think that it's inferior. Although if you peeled it, it would taste just as good as the perfect looking fruit.
First, just to touch on that, I mean, there are these services now there's this site called Imperfect Foods, which you may have heard of, which, there's a couple of these that sell blemished produce essentially. And so obviously there's someone sort of working on that end of it. On the restaurant side, I think a key distinction that you guys need to keep in mind is sort of the pizza place, the donut shop versus the restaurant where it's like an assembled meal, meaning are you selling, there's the steak, there's the sides, and is someone having to assemble it, or are you creating sort of new items that are essentially just the leftover? We have extra fish and that's not going to go, we can't carry the fish over till tomorrow. The produce we can because we haven't cooked it yet. But look, clearly food waste is an issue. I think what happens at the end of a lot of nights is food gets given to the staff, food gets thrown away, obviously. City Harvest, which is a charitable organization here in New York, does have a network where they pick up food from restaurants that are closing, and it gets donated. But it's clearly an issue. I think you also need, and this, I guess Seth really touched on, you need to think about sort of the operational end of it, because what are you adding to you're talking about the end of a shift, really. And someone's got, a whole bunch of closing items at the end of their shift. And what else do they need to do? And how much are they going to be, excited to do that? Believe it or not, in a lot of cases, I need a different iPad for each of these Grubhub, Caviar, DoorDash delivery services. So I've already got all those on my podium. Plus I've got my regular POS system. Plus I've got my open table system. Plus now I have, a QR code reader to deal with till. And I think there's aspects like that, just from an operational standpoint, you want to think about sort of folding in. I personally think the to-go aspect is a better aspect. And I guess the caveat I would make is there's a concept of sort of discounts for people who come in off hours. And I think that should be distinct from sort of your product, which is essentially people who come and take what's ultimately going to be thrown out, as opposed to, filling the restaurant in off hours with discounted patrons. To me, it's a different sort of addressable market almost. I mean, I understand the concept of it, but I would focus on the food waste side.
Yeah, so there were a lot of things that you mentioned, Barry, that I can touch on. So to start, of course, there's the operational side of it, and that's something we've thought about over and over again. And through trial and error, through our launch, through seeing different types of, setups for different types of restaurants, the last thing we want to do is create another problem. What we have seen, though, is that a lot of restaurants already have an iPad set up for either checkout, for Grubhub, for whatever else it may be. And it is an iPad. So finally, if they just go to the App Store and download our app, all of the restaurants that we've worked with so far, and of course, this may not be the case in the future, have a camera that they can just scan the QR code. If they don't have something to scan the QR code, if you hit X on our app, you can see a confirmation, a written confirmation of the payment. Third, also, if they have the restaurant version of the app, they see that somebody has placed this order. That order notification only comes through when the payment comes through. So there are a couple of other things that we've kind of eased out, right, for the restaurant versions.
Look, I think it's a good concept.
Yeah.
But it is working with the restaurants. I mean, the other point I had was the sort of idea of, you know, an assembled meal versus
Yes.
one-off,
Okay.
like a slice of pizza or a
Perfect. So that's exactly what I wanted to talk about. Every restaurant owner has full autonomy as to what they want to post on the app. Because the exact same thing that you just said is what we've heard from high-end restaurants that are on our app, that, hey, I have a steak that my customers will pay $100 for, and it's a precious steak, and this is my specialty. I'm not going to sell my food for a discount. So we hear that all the time. And if the restaurant owner feels that way and feels like, hey, these are the 4 dishes on my menu that are worth their price and even more, and I'm never going to sell for a discount, guess what? They never have to. But it's up to the restaurant owner where, hey, if you have an entire pantry of breadsticks that is not getting sold, or is you don't have enough people coming into COVID sitting down, whatever it may be, they can throw that on the app, right? Or if they once every 6 months want to put it on the app and bring in a new customer, create new customer acquisition, they have that flexibility. They have that availability. Now, you mentioned Too Good To Go in New York. They have a concept of mystery bags. So what they do, that's tougher on the operational side as well, because they have to get the Too Good To Go bags, put whatever they can in there, and then the person comes and picks it up. In terms of what we do, the restaurant, anytime they have food to go, they already have their way. They have their boxes, they have their bags that they order, etc. We don't have a mystery bag concept because we want the customer to have the freedom to know what they want to pick. Because we know people who use Too Good To Go and get a mystery bag and they get like an orange, and they thought it was dinner. So that's the thing. Yeah. So that's something that we want to do better in terms of being their competition. And the restaurant has the ability to package whatever it is at their point and whatever they end up selling. So of course, it's operations can always be better. And especially because we're new, we have done a lot of trial and error. We will continue to do trial and error until the system is perfect. But those are really, really great concerns that we've already heard from so many restaurant owners. But I hope that answers some of your questions.
Yeah, no. Yeah. And I think it's interesting because the mystery bag idea, I knew that was how Too Good To Go does it.
Yes.
And I think
the
double-edged sword of that is, to some extent, the restaurant can post earlier.
Absolutely.
Meaning they know they'll have something, but they don't know what it is. So they can sort of make their offering available earlier in the day. But yes, the consumer doesn't really know what they're getting. And so what ends up happening, because I know people who use it, there'll be like 3 or 4 restaurants that are like, well, I know this place is a pastry shop and, 80% of the stuff I like. So therefore I use that one versus this place where, they might have 5 different items and there's only one that I like. So what's the chances of that one being?
Exactly. And you're gambling, right? And then you end up spending a couple of bucks for something you may not like. And then you're like, well, now I got to go to Subway anyways. So what's
I think they have to do a bigger discount.
Exactly. Well said.
Let's hear from Fred Jones. How do they handle food waste in North Carolina?
Well, we were trying to do several things. We were starting to actually collect food waste in a large container and weigh it at the end of the day, with the idea of starting a KPI on which management of the restaurant would be incented or not get a bonus at all if they didn't reduce it. I know one of the suggestions was have food waste reduction targets. Well, some companies have been working real hard at this a long time, and so they are at a very different spot in the reduction curve than restaurants that really don't care so much. You know, we also put in place a food portion control. I found that perhaps that our servers in the cafeteria lines were serving as much as 60% over serving for a certain food. So they implemented what we call spoodles, which is a way of kind of measuring the food. I would think that the cafeterias in particular would be an excellent source for selling the leftover food. You know, if you're going to serve 30 items up until closing time, then by definition, half of a tray of food is going to be left on average every day. Now, your Jell-O salads you can bring out the next day. Some of your lettuce salads, chicken can become chicken cacciatore the next day, but there's going to be a lot of things that are just not going to make it. And in fact, there's some foods after an hour and a half on the food line, they've got to be pitched by regulation. So I think not only the type of restaurant, but also the environment in which you're in would make a big difference on the attractiveness of the app, which I think sounds wonderful. If you've got 1 in 6 Americans having trouble really getting enough food, that tells you there's a demand. And since people will pay less for basic, whether it's an airline flight or an automobile, there ought to be a big attraction. We also served and made up and boxed up thousands of meals a day that were distributed to Boys and Girls Clubs and YMCAs for their after-school programs to keep kids off the street, number one, but also it was important in nutrition because often that kid, that would be the best meal that they had the entire day, where they had either 1 or 2 parents that might be working 2 jobs each. They weren't getting attention, they weren't getting food. And if I was a parent and had a chance to feed my family some quality food at a big discount, man, I would jump at it. So if we could advertise that app in places where people that have limited means frequent, whether it's a food pantry or some other place, I think that would be really helpful.
The specific question about an operation and the ability to be able to make items available either after lunch, between lunch and dinner, which is when the chef is assessing what has got an expiry date that they can't use or they have too much of, there's an opportunity. And then later on in the evening after the rush, I'm talking about full service restaurants and hotels. So there are those 2 opportunities. The other gentleman before was mentioning that. I think there is that opportunity. And the other thing is that we have, I know in San Diego, I know in New York, and I know in San Francisco and Los Angeles, this homelessness problem and the feeding of homeless. And I don't know how Till could get involved in that, but it is a massive issue. And most hotels are very civically minded and usually are very tied in with the political activity. I've always felt that in the small towns, that either it's Culver City or even Beverly Hills. And the politics can come into play as well, dealing with the food. But I want to emphasize again, somehow you've got to have the chef who is going off at 10 o'clock, looking at 9 o'clock and saying, hey, this excess food situation could put $20 into my pocket if I do it right. And the server cannot be made to work without getting his $10. The key part is the kitchen. They control everything. And the managers don't control the food. They can control the results of bad food management and get rid of the chef. But you want to incentivize the chefs and not have them pocket it and take it home for their family, which is what's happening right now in badly managed kitchens. So I think there's a PR part of this that I think is extremely attractive. There is a political get together with the political forces in the small towns and counties and deal somehow, and I don't know how, on the homeless issue, because that is a massive problem that seems to be right in front of our faces every single day wherever we move in our lives.
In terms of, food insecurity and homelessness is definitely a huge problem, and we're completely aware of that. And we're glad that, you guys mentioned that. We're currently working on addressing that. How we're doing it as of right now, we're partnered with some local nonprofits. So what restaurants are able to do is they're able to sell their food surplus on our app, as we mentioned before, or they could also donate their food to the nonprofits that we're partnered with, and they also get a tax deduction for every meal that they donate. So that's something we're currently working on addressing, and moving forward, we definitely want to scale up and help as many people as we can.
Marianne and Amanda, and in their presentation, I'm concerned about the creation of more big government in what you talked about, and penalizing Tyson, Cargill. To me, that's only going to add a cost to food that would be passed on to the consumer, and make food more expensive, not less expensive. So I'd want you to consider that. CSAs are great, but Marianne, you live in New York City or New York State. There are not too many CSAs, I don't believe, in the winter. Food is a critical issue. If we get nothing more out of this than a discussion about food and getting food to reducing waste, but also getting food to clients or to customers that really need it, that it would make a huge difference in their life. It's critical.
Our concern was that without some sort of penalty, that nobody would create these plans, nobody would follow through with them. And we do try to give the smaller ventures more time. So I would say that was our justification with our little penalty system, because obviously the incentive for industries to get involved is that when you save wasted food, you are saving money. Right there is incentive enough, I think. But for the factory farms, Tyson and Cargill, our aim is not to penalize them or punish them. They're multi-billion-dollar industries, and the costly externalities of their industry, from sewage spills to air pollution, all those antibiotic resistance in consumers, we see the 1% tax as a justifiable way to offset some of those externalities that they don't currently pay for.
Okay, I hate to cut this off. Fred, you get the last word.
I would just echo Mike's concern about additional regulations and taxes and government regulation. I'm very much a capitalist at heart, and the capitalistic system has done an exceedingly better job of allocating resources than have programs from federal and state governments. I think you need to put the incentives there. And in the first part, while these statistics are just mind-blowing of how much food is wasted, I think it's like throwing gasoline emissions into the air. People say, well, I can't be bothered by it. And somehow people have got to internalize it and make it their own values. I don't know if I would commend everyone to read Simon Sinek's book or watch his TED Talk, which says Start With Why, where he goes, and one of the examples he uses is Martin Luther King's effort that Martin said, among other things, when nature's laws are in conflict with government laws, they need to be brought together. So this wasn't racist, it wasn't partisan. People said he's right, and they internalized those values as their own values. And Dr. King got a long way by having people internalize that as their own. And somehow, I think if we can make Americans feel that way, rather than just ignore the statistics, that will get a long way.
I'm going to recommend that TED Talk also. I've seen it 3 or 4 times. And he said when Martin Luther King was getting ready to give his speech, he didn't say, I have a plan. He said, I have a dream.
Okay, I would suggest you might look at the consumer for paying part of this, because that's really where a lot of this comes from. I think our food costs as a percentage of disposable income is 20% now of what it was a few decades ago, and it's a lot lower than in most countries. So there ought to be some room for the consumer to pay that as well and get their attention about the food waste.
So, CJ, it's been about 2 weeks now since our original session with the older experts and with the students who comprise the cabinet. Now that you've heard all of this input, are you guys modifying your plans in any way?
Yeah, we're modifying our future plans. As of right now, we're still a startup and we have a small team, so we're not able to execute on everything that we seek out to do. We kind of have to narrow our focus, but moving forward, some of the insights they gave us will definitely inform our decisions in the future.
Great. Anything in particular that you liked that you heard?
One thing that we really liked is it was brought up that hotels and food caterers have a lot of food surplus at the end of the day, and that really aligns with our mission. So moving forward, that's definitely something we want to address.
Great. All right, Brooke, over to you.
Thank you, Jeff. So Amanda and Marianne, after hearing some comments and critiques from our experts in our cabinet, what were your immediate reactions to what they said?
Yeah, absolutely. So we just wanted to say thanks again for having us and how valuable it was to get feedback from some real experts that can tell us how this proposal might be received by food industries and consumers alike.
So the experts expressed concern about the penalties on food industries that don't make waste plans. So we will remove the fine for non-participating industries. They also suggested that since consumers account for the bulk of food waste, they should help pay for the change to come. So along with factory farms.
And to kind of get consumers to do this, we're going to decrease the cost of recycling pickup and increase the cost of garbage pickup to get consumers to compost more and pick up some of the slack.
Great. Thank you guys for your presentation and your participation today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. So did you have any reactions to the Till team and their app in concerns with food waste?
An incredible idea, and we would be especially excited to see how it would apply to chains. And obviously it's in the early stages of development, but once the app gets established, I think it could really be powerful in helping big restaurant chains reduce their waste. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with Marianne. I think food waste, again, is something that not a lot of people realize is a big problem in the US. And I think the Till team's idea and message and goal is really awesome. And I'd love to see how it progresses in the future.
Thank you for tuning in to Let's Fix America, where America is the big winner.
Next week, a new team of champions will present their ideas on healthcare, and they will be presenting their ideas to a brand new set of experts who come from the world of healthcare.
If you enjoy public policy discussions like these, we invite you to Our National Conversation at joinonc.com. Our National Conversation is the producer of Let's Fix America. At joinonc.com, we offer news, opinions, public policy solutions, and civic engagement opportunities, all in one place.
Once again, we are completely neutral when it comes to politics. If we can get America talking again, we can solve America's problems. See you next week.